This week on DRC, Brad is back after his trip to the Spring Championship Series. So he's going to take a little time to talk to us about his trip and how he did. And we end talking about the meta, what to play over the next few days before the season ends. All that and more. DRC starts right now.
You're listening to the Death Rattle Crew, a Hearthstone podcast.
DRC, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Death Rattle Crew, a Hearthstone podcast. This is episode 72. I am one of your hosts, Mike Tech2 Hearn, joined by our other host, Mr. Bradford Lee.
What's up, Mike Tech2 Hearn?
Everything is going fantastic. I'm just going to say that.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's
Good
it.
to hear.
Don't forget, you can find us at www.deathrattlecrew.com on YouTube, Twitter, farmersonly.com. Just search Death Rattle Crew on your podcast catcher of choice.
That joke never gets old.
It doesn't. I love it. Be it iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all those places, you will find us. And don't forget to rate us on those, on your podcast catcher of choice, if it allows it. I know iTunes does. Google Play, I think you can on Google Play.
Yeah.
I think you can. I know
I'm going to say yeah.
Yeah. We'll go with yes. That sounds right. Bradford Lee, where can people find you?
You can always find me at twitch.tv/Bradford Lee, as always.
Now, they're not going to be able to find you for foreseeable future, right? What's your schedule?
Yeah. So So I'm out of town from the, let me pull my calendar real quick. From Friday the 1st of July till the 11th of July. So I'm gone for like a week and a half.
Okay.
After already being gone for a week for the Hearthstone Championship Tour, which we'll talk about here, I'm sure, in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, without getting so how was your week other than the big news? So I want to save that.
Other than
that, okay,
it was good. So you mean like not talking about the championship tour or anything?
We'll come to that.
There's literally like hardly anything other than that. I flew home. Let's see, Monday night.
Okay.
Or Monday during the day, and I streamed on Monday. So literally my Monday was a travel day and stream, and I did nothing else. And then now I'm like getting ready to leave again. So it's just been like 24. I just haven't stopped is the thing. Like stopping has been like 6 hours of sleep, wake up, lather, rinse, repeat. It's just been a lot of stuff to do. And I mean, that happens whenever you're like busy and traveling and such and doing different things. So it's not like there's just nothing really exciting to talk about other than that.
Okay.
I got my Death Rattle Crew t-shirt. So
it came in late, didn't it?
It did. It came in like 4 hours too late.
Figures.
So I wasn't able to travel with it, sadly.
That's how it works.
It looks awesome, dude.
Isn't it nice? It's not bad, is it?
I honestly, I looked at it and I put it on and I was like, wow, this looks way better than I thought it was going to look.
Yeah.
Like, I already knew that like you did a really good job with designing the t-shirts, but when I actually put it on, I was like, okay, I'm like would proudly wear this around because it looks good.
Right.
Like it's not one of those things that like, oh, I bought this t-shirt to support blah, blah, blah or whatever. And then I just didn't wear it. Like I always think of like I go on like color runs aren't a good example. Like you go on like marathon runs or like I used to do like bicycle marathon things and such. And like you get those like marathon t-shirts that like they're just terribly designed and you're like they're like the things you wear to the gym because you're afraid to wear them anywhere else, like and so like I was fearing that that's exactly what the shirt was going to end up becoming.
Never.
Which is like the absolute downside to it, but it was the exact opposite. Like I'm totally gonna start rocking it everywhere.
It was a comfortable shirt. I wanted to make sure I got something that was like comfortable and then look good. And I got to give a shout out because Garrett over at the Angry Chicken, he actually did the Death Rattle Crew logo way back when.
Yeah, this was started. Like 2 year ago now at this point, right?
Yeah, almost a year and a half, something like that. Yeah. So shout out to Garrett. Thank you, sir. Everybody loves it. And then Brian Kibler threw a shout out on during the
games.
Yes, thank you. During your series.
Okay.
I think he spotted one of my buddies he said it was either at BlizzCon or Comic-Con or something. I think it was at what was the DreamHack in, I think it was Austin this summer.
Maybe. Okay. You mean like he was wearing the DRC t-shirt out there?
He saw somebody else wearing the DRC, and I remember my buddy at work, Ryan, wore it while he was there. He repped while he was there, so I think maybe that's where Brian saw him. I don't know. Could be wrong. Could be completely wrong.
I'm gonna be honest real quick.
Yes.
I haven't watched through all my games thoroughly with the commentary on. I watched them on stream, but I like muted the commentary because we were talking about it.
Yeah.
So I've watched all my games, but I haven't actually listened to them with the commentary. So I'll have to sit down and find some time to go back through that and listen to that, because that's really cool that they were the DRC t-shirts are already doing work for us, right. You know.
And like I said during the PSA last week, I'm still working on getting that set up. So if you guys out there playing at home want one, I'll get you information soon. I like them. Hopefully we can get other type, because I wear a lot of tank tops because I got to show off the guns. Now really they're just comfortable. I like tank tops. I want to get some DRC tank tops because that would be fantastic. DRC pants, socks, boxers, babies bibs. You name it.
That's pretty much what I feel like you meet the pinnacle of your merchandising career when you've gotten the baby bib.
When you got the baby bib. I like that.
Because anyone who is willing to purchase a baby bib that's branded is kind of crazy, because you know that baby bib is going to last you about 3 months and then it's gone. You know, it's the clothing item that never stays with you ever.
And DRC lasts forever. DRC does not get old. DRC is life. Right. It is love.
Yep. The pyramids, they're going to go away. DRC, it's going to be here 1,000 years from now.
Absolutely. People are going to go, that podcast. Love that
it's going to be engraved in walls. It's the world that we live in. I mean, it's Death Rattle crew. We're like invincible to death, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
That is how it works.
Yeah.
I like it.
Obviously.
Well, my week was pretty boring.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, how's your week?
That's about it. Just boring.
Oh, bummer.
I've been looking forward to this episode.
Oh yeah.
So that's pretty much been it though.
Okay. It sucks that we're still in Skeleton Crew and we don't get Mushu right now. It's my fault. It's my fault. I showed up late today, so I could. So Mushu couldn't show up because of it.
You showed your cards. You showed all your cards.
Yeah.
People had you on a pedestal, not a pinnacle. It was a pedestal. You were a pinnacle of the pedestal. And you just,
I guess you could say,
and you're like, I was late. Now everyone's like, oh, maybe he's not perfect.
Nope, definitely not perfect. We can see that as if you go back through my games. So yeah, I definitely made a misplay on one of those games that was pretty big.
I'm excited to talk about that because I don't know if it actually
impacted the
game. I don't know. I'm interested to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm interested as well to talk about that. I've discussed it obviously.
Oh, I bet you have.
Other people,
right?
Because everybody and their mother has an opinion, you know, and that's just how it is. But like, yeah, for sure. Anyway, maybe we should hop into that then.
Yeah. All right. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with Meta Anatomy. DRC would like to thank Brainiacs for their support of this podcast. If you have a tech idea for improving your business's workflow, Brainiacs can provide a turnkey solution to specifically fit your needs. You can contact them at www.brainiux.com. And welcome back. This is Meta Anatomy, your one weekly stop for everything Meta and Hearthstone. I'm Tech2, joined by Bradford Lee. Okay, so Brad, you just got back from the Spring America's Championship for Hearthstone.
Yes, I did.
We're going to talk about your games, but first, let's talk about what was the experience? What happened? What's the story? Give us the scoop.
Okay, so I guess this is the antithesis of a meta discussion then, but whatever. This is not very meta anatomy of us. But basically what they did is, so like 2 weeks prior to leaving, we I talked with the Blizzard people, we booked our flights, we had everything figured out on that end. And before I left, we actually had to submit all of our deck lists and have them ready to go. So they were already submitted and ready to go before I got on my flight. When I got onto my flight and I got to before I got to LA, I had a layover in Salt Lake City. And so I got to Salt Lake City, opened my phone, and they had already given us access to everybody else's deck lists. So I look at the deck lists, and immediately the person I'm playing in first round was Rosti. And I look at his lineup, and I'm like, crap, this is the one lineup I was hoping to dodge. Like his style of his hyper aggressive lineup is the lineup that I don't want to be playing. And I actually remember telling that to my test partners like Immortal Lion and Racy and a couple of different people that I tested with, but mainly them. I was like, this is the lineup I don't want to face in the first round. If I face this lineup in the first round, it's probably not going to be great for me. Like that would be a big downside, basically. So I look at it, and so I'm already in like the airport. And I'm just like, I sent him a message actually to Immortal, and I'm like, well, probably gonna lose my first round. That's what I sent him. Which is like the opposite of what you want to be saying. You don't want to be like, well, I'm not gonna do well. Like I don't want to be saying that to people, obviously. But like, I also recognize that like, it like I recognize that like I still had a good chance. Like I could still pull out the right, and if I created the correct strategy to beat that lineup, I could have done it. But me and Rossi actually both agreed that I was like, he was like 65-45 or like 70-30 favored to win that particular matchup. So day one, I was already like a little bit like, I went into my flight on LA and I just thought about it conceptually. I'm like, what am I banning? How do I have to queue first? And like, what can I not queue? And when we get to the games itself, we'll talk about that more in detail. So I spent that entire flight like already thinking conceptually about what my thing was. So literally a week before, so it would have been Monday. It would have been Monday, and I played my games on Saturday. So on Monday, I started thinking about it conceptually. Like, this is what he's on. This is what I'm on. What's my strategy? I actually already had my strategy figured out by like Tuesday. Like I knew exactly what my game plan was. I knew what I was doing. I knew what my bans were for the most part. I talked to other people, and like they also were like, how do we ban? What's our thoughts on it? And so they did their thing, and we like talked about it more, and like kept like, obviously I didn't stop thinking about it and talking about it, but like I ended up sticking to my guns from that. And so like really that flight to LA was like the most important prep for me. Like, cause it was less about playing the games and getting more comfortable with the decks and more about just thinking about it conceptually at that point. Okay. So so I went from there, and then as soon as we got to the airport, I get picked up by like the guy who was shuttling us to the hotel, and we picked up Cydonia at the same time. And me and Cydonia were like, "Hey, let's go grab dinner." So we're gonna go grab dinner, and we ran into Rosti actually in the hotel lot, or in one of the hallways of the hotel on like one of the floors. And we're like, "Hey, come grab dinner with us." So we all went out and grabbed dinner, and it was awesome because like literally from the very get go, all of us were already seated together, chatting and conversing and becoming good friends. So it was really cool that like. Yeah, and it was really cool that like we had that ability to just become friends and like chat with each other and hang out. And then by the next day, because it was it was evening time at that point, we all went back to our rooms, called it a day. By the next day, I met everybody else, and everybody was fantastic. Like every single person that I met was really, really awesome. And like all the people who worked with ESL, all the people with Blizzard, they just all love what they're doing. It's like, there's no other way to say it. They love what they're doing, and that's what really makes them good at what they're doing. It's not like there may be a better quality or a better person in the entire world that is more qualified than X person at doing their job maybe, but the fact that they all love what they're doing is why they're the best at what they're doing. And so it was just super fun to hang out with all those people. So at any rate, so Tuesday rolls around, and Tuesday we did like studio type stuff. So I don't know if you guys know anything about this, but ESL was in charge of running all the production side of it. And they basically take you into the studio, do interviews on that kind of a day. And it's kind of a boring day too, because like there's 8 of us that are doing this process, so they can only do one person at a time. Okay. And so there's like this lull time for the other 7 people. So it was kind of like a half day, because they did us in groups of 4. So I did like the afternoon half versus the morning half. And we just kind of sat around and waited for our time to do our interviews, talk to everybody, take pictures, do sexy fireplace poses, those kind
I gotta say, that was fantastic.
It was so good. Well, okay, so I was talking to Brian Kibler.
Yes, those mouse pads, man.
His he did the play mats that were him as a sexy pose, right? So the backstory behind this is he was playing Magic the Gathering on what they call the Magic Cruise. Is apparently this backstory, and they had like these like they're almost like the wedding pictures, with like the white backdrops, and you have to like sit down with the couple, and the couple does like a pose, and like they take them, and then you get like your memorabilia, your memorable picture. And he was like, his wife was like, you have to do one of those, and so he did one, and it has become like this sensation in a sense, where he is he's in this, it's sort of a sexy pose in a sense, but it's so corny and cheesy looking. Anyway, somebody made it into a playmat for Magic, and then they were like, can you sign this? And he was like, you made that into a playmat? Oh my God. And it blew up. And before you know it, he was like producing those. And like now if you go to any Magic tournament, you'll find that the sexy pose Kibler playmat, like it's like a thing, And so they were like, hey, we need you to do a pose. And I was like, oh, okay. And And I was trying to think of like what would be good. And I was like, oh, I want to do this sexy Kibler pose. I want to channel my inner Brian Kibler in front of the fireplace. And they're like, okay, deal. And so they were on board with it, and I was on board with it. And so thus the sexy pose was born. It was hilarious. It definitely made my day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was one of the coolest parts. The fact that they actually used that in production, like rather than like filming it and then being like, Brad's an idiot, let's cut this roll, you know? Like they were like, yeah, let's put the most ridiculous crap up that we can because it's hilarious. You know, and it wasn't super cringe, which is a big factor.
No,
like,
it was that, and then where you were stacking the
mugs
cups,
or whatever.
Yes, I loved that. That was so damn funny.
It was the worst part about that was that one was like so terrible. I was just like, that is going to be super cringe. It was cringe, but it wasn't like to the point where it was just like disgusting amounts of cringe.
Like,
just kind of like annoying.
Okay, to be fair, I think cringe is when somebody does something and they're just being themselves.
Right, and then it's awkward as hell.
And then it's awkward. You were purposely being funny. That's why I don't think it was cringe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So it wasn't as cringe because it was known that it was staged the way it was.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
So yeah, we did that day. And then on Wednesday, we went, I think it was Wednesday, wasn't it? I don't know. I'm losing track of time, like what days it was exactly. But one of the days we went over to Blizzard, and that was kind of cool. We got to go. Nice. I don't know if anyone's ever been to the Blizzard campus, but it is a great place to work. I can understand why they keep long-term employees. Like they've got a beach, or not like a beach, like a sand volleyball court. They've got a nice like lawn area between the buildings. They have these huge statues of like Gromash and all kinds of like just different statues and stuff. They've got like a library where it has like all kinds of like games. Like basically any game you'd ever want to play is in their library. Like if you're like, I want to play this niche game from 1984 that was, you know, like I want to play D&D version 1, like they've got it there in their library, which is awesome. And they've got like a tabletop gaming like table, and it's a beautiful tabletop. Like the library was really awesome. Like it's just so cool, and you can like book it out for event times throughout the week and such. And they have like a gym for everyone to hang out in if you work and you want to work out as well. It's a really, really nice campus, and it was really cool to like go tour the whole entire campus. Yeah, I just really enjoyed that. The other really cool thing about that was, well, I don't know if I really enjoyed it. There was a bunch of lull time where it felt like it was awkward because it felt like to some extent we were kind of invading on people's workspace to some extent, in my opinion. Sure. But like at the same time, like it was cool just to like go visit. Like it's you know, it was something that not everyone gets to do, which is really neat to be able to have the opportunity to do. Mm-hmm. So we ate lunch with some of the Hearthstone developers, and then we did like a question and answer session with some of the Hearthstone developers as well, which was really neat during that. Okay. So we got to ask some questions about like how we felt about the Hearthstone development, what were our thoughts on like nerfs and those kind of questions. And I'm sure they've been asked these questions a million times before, but it was kind of neat to just be able to talk about it with the developers specifically, and have this sort of like, I don't know, like this open forum to discuss this as a group with you. And that's really cool. It's just really, really neat to be able to do that with them. So that was really neat. But the culmination and the thing that I liked the most about going to Blizzard was, I don't know what they called it, but I think they called it the War Room. If you envision, let's say the NASA like launch room, you know what I mean? Like that like, I don't know what that's called. Is that the ground control room?
Yeah,
you know, like sure. When they're launching things from NASA. Imagine that room, and you know, it's got like all of the all of the TVs all across the wall, and it like spans the wall. It's almost like an IMAX theater, you know, like it's got like just these pictures all the way across the wall, and everyone's sitting at these computers that have like 4 monitors, and they've all got like data analysis on it. And what the War Room is, well, I don't know if it's actually called the War Room, but I'm going to call it the War Room. What it is, and we weren't able to go in, but there was like a looking glass room, because if you're not an employee for them, you can't go in.
Oh, sure.
But what it is that it's basically the lifeblood monitor of everything BattleNet. So it's like anything that would ever go down in BattleNet, they would know. They'd be the first on top of it. And like they've got this other conference room. So like if something does go down, let's say Hearthstone goes down on like the North American server or something, they've got this other conference room where they can pull in people from the Hearthstone team and immediately start working on it, you know? And so then they're like, we don't leave this room until it's back up, you know, like that's the rule. Like we got to get the game back up. And so it's just really neat to go in there and like look at the wall, because on the wall they have this like, actually I think they had Recful stream up at the time. They had a Overwatch tournament up at the time on like one side of the wall, and like there's stacked monitors the whole way with different things that are going on and like different shows that are being broadcast basically on one side, and then you work your way across and you get all the way to like one wall where there's just analytics, like, and like they're tracking all the things that are going on with the server. And then, you know, like you all the way throughout the whole thing, they've just got all these different ways to track. So like they'll have like Recful stream up, for instance, because like, you know, if a streamer's stream goes down, they can use that as a reference point to say, hey, the server's having latency issues or something. And like they also can like have a tournament up and they can see if like there's issues going on with the tournament, so they can see if there's latency issues there, as well as just having like, you know, they're constantly tracking like the heartbeat of the servers. And it's just really, really was cool to see like that, just to be in front of that, because I was like, wow, this is really the true thing that keeps everything ticking here at Blizzard. So that was the coolest thing about the whole trip. So
that's pretty neat.
that was a cool day. What other things did we do? We did a lot of stuff at the studio. Some of the things you guys didn't even see yet, because they'll do like B-roll filming for the next prelims. So like that's kind of stuff that will show up, will pop back up in the next couple months. So they did like interviews with me and all the other players in relations to, hey, next prelims, if you're on a feature match, we'll have this available and we can kick back to it if we need to make a cutscene to something. So there was a lot of like, one of my friends that I ate lunch with earlier today was saying, wow, you guys were there for that long doing that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, because they want it, like the way that they do the preliminaries for Hearthstone Championship Tour is they send you to satellite locations. So you're not in front of these people that would normally be filming. So they want to get as much material as they can, so they have that ability to like have this on stock and be ready to use it anytime. So like this is the kind of stuff that even maybe 2 years down the line, if I do well at the Hearthstone or championships and make me championships like 2 years down the line again, they can pull back to this material that they've created from that. So it's really cool. There was another night where we went out with the casters and ate dinner, which was really fun, and got to sit there and talk with Cora and Froden and Kibler and basically all the casters. I'm trying to think who didn't go. TJ was there. There was one caster who wasn't in yet. Oh, I think Raven wasn't there yet. But we got to sit there and chat with everybody, and it was really neat to be able to just banter back and forth and discuss like for instance, we weren't really talking Hearthstone as much. We were talking like geopolitical issues and because I mean, we all talk Hearthstone all the time. So it was like, obviously that's like where the conversation starts, because when you don't know people and you both have a common interest, that's an easy starting point.
Right, sure.
It was cool to be able to like move into other categories of conversation and just converse with them throughout the whole process. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah. Trying to think what else is really cool. Oh, I really like Raven. That's just my shout out to Raven right there. He's cool. Raven and I went out and hung out one evening and had a good time, and then came back the next day, and he's just super professional and really good person, and just somebody really fun to talk to. He gave me some good constructive criticism back and forth in relation to how I played in one game, and we kind of like talked about it. So like I really like the guy. He's just really good person to hang out with, and yeah, he's a good mate now. So
cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, so that was the trip of itself. There isn't really like anything, like there's a bunch of other things I could talk about, but it's not like it's not really the most important thing in the world. Like the most important thing of that entire trip was me playing the games, and then also probably going to Blizzard, because those two things were awesome, you know? Yeah, so that was cool. The set, one other thing, the set was really, really, really like smaller than I thought it was going to be. I actually thought that like the set would be like multiple stage sections, rather than what they did is they built like one stage basically, and they cut it in half. So one side's where people playing and one side's where the analysts and like the commentators are at. I actually thought there would be like that, like how I'm imagining, but cut into two different sets. So it'd be like on one side of the room would be this set, the other one would be on this side of the room. But they really like, I've never been in that like condensed set setting before. Okay. But it was really, it's like you guys at home don't see it like that, but it's actually really condensed in like size where it was at. So that was really interesting to like kind of get a concept of just how small of a location you can create such like a dynamic experience and make it look like you're in this much bigger setting than it really is. And like, so it makes this more grandeur kind of setting for the viewer at home.
Sure.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, that was the general trip as a whole for it though.
Okay.
So yeah. What's next is Saturday. We played on Saturday. So
Yes.
my first round was against Rosti, and that's when we played our games. The most important thing about the games, obviously, is that last game I did make a misplay, and I also made a line that was incredibly aggressive that actually cost me some potential damage. So we'll talk about that here in a minute, because I'm sure that's the thing that most people were most interested in.
Sure.
But I want to kind of run through the set as a whole.
Yes.
You'll notice that, and actually I talked with Rosti about this afterwards. He and we both were queuing based on very specific things. He expected me to either queue Druid or Shaman first. And I ended up queuing Druid first because my Druid deck was my 50-50 across the board. It was the deck that had a chance against all of his decks, but wasn't incredibly favored in any of them, right? It was like some were 45-50s, some were 50-50s, some were 60-40s. It just had a decent matchup against all the field. So I queued my Cthulhu Druid first, and I beat my first matchup against his Hunter deck, which is exactly the Hunter deck or the matchup that I wanted him to queue first. Like I was expecting him to either queue his Shaman deck or his Hunter deck to start with. So my first game, I figured if I can queue my Druid, it's pretty 50-50 against Shaman. But the Hunter matchup was the one that I had the best favorability as the Druid deck. I had like maybe a 60% chance to win that, I'd say. Like it was slightly higher in testing. And so that's why I figured that he was probably queuing that, because I think that he thought that I thought he was going to think that I would queue Shaman first. And queuing Druid, I actually was able to sneak that first win. And that was really important because I knew that it was going to come down to where I was going to be behind and having to beat his Freeze Mage, as Freeze Mage was the one deck in his lineup that I had a good chance against. So I made sure I queued my Druid first. And then the next thing I wanted to do was I needed to make sure I picked up my Rogue win against his Zoo before he could get his Zoo out of the way. So you'll notice I queued my Rogue deck 3 times.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're that, Mike.
And that actually, you answered my question. I was wondering why you did that. Okay.
Yeah, it was because of sequencing. So, and I'll touch a little bit more onto that. Like the one thing I didn't want to queue was my Shaman deck, because I knew if I keep my Shaman deck on deck, I keep it hidden and behind me, and I don't use it, he can't queue his Freeze Mage. And if I can force him to not be, well, he could queue his Freeze Mage, but I wouldn't suspect that he's going to queue his Freeze Mage. And if I can force him to not queue his Freeze Mage till last, I can try and set up a circumstance where I can get rid of my Rogue. And the only two things I have to win with then at that point is I have to be able to pick up my sort of 50-50 against Freeze with Hunter, and then try and get my relatively positive matchup with Shaman against his Freeze Mage. So that's why I was keeping the Shaman on deck. I wasn't trying to use it because I wanted to force him to not be able to play his Freeze Mage, which I think that's something that a lot of people don't really recognize as much as a strategy in deck selection. Like a lot of people say, hey, it's Conquest, just roll the dice and pick any deck, and that is a strategy. I mean, that's not necessarily like a terrible strategy, but I think in this 5-deck format that we were playing in, where you have to win a best of 7, I'm better off trying to sandbag my Shaman and pick up my win later, because I know I need to keep him off Freeze and try and get my Rogue its win while I can, because Rogue was pretty mediocre for his lineup. If anyone doesn't know this, Rosti was on a very aggressive lineup with Freeze Mage in addition to that.
Extremely.
Right. And so his lineup was relatively bad against Warrior as a whole. And so that's why he banned my Warrior. I also banned his Warrior because even though I would have preferred to ban something else, I think his Warrior was the deck that was the strongest deck that he brought probably. And it was also the deck that put me in a position where if like say I was down and I had to play just against his Warrior last, I probably couldn't pick up more than one win against it, because he was slightly favored with all of his decks against against me with his Warrior, or against all my decks with his Warrior. So like I wanted to make sure I got rid of that, and I think it was the correct ban. In fact, everybody that I've pretty much talked to now has pretty much said it was. Rosti I talked to afterwards, and he said that the only people that beat him in best of 7s when he was testing were people that banned his Warrior. So like he even agrees, like in testing, it showed that banning the Warrior was really the only successful route that I was going to have to taking down that relatively unfavorable matchup or lineups. So then let's move on. Let's get past all these other games. Oh, actually, I want to mention one other thing. If you ever do go back and rewatch the series, if anyone ever does go back and rewatch the series, I want to point out something that I did in the Hunter versus Rogue matchup. It's something that I think a lot of players don't recognize, and I think it's a really good learning tool for people who want to get better with Rogue. You'll notice that there was a turn It would have been his turn. Well, he would have had 7 mana. It would have been my turn 7 or turn 8. I'm not sure if I had coin or not. I can't remember now. But it was turn 7 or 8. It was right before he would have played his Call of the Wild that he had in hand. Now, you have to assume on turn 8, a hunter's going to have their Call of the Wild.
They
right?
always do.
They always do. And so during this turn, I'm at 12 life. And I have my Gadgetzan Auctioneer on deck, ready to go. And you'll notice I'm already doing math during his turn. Like I was in the tank and I was like looking down during his turn. Like I was thinking through my next turn before the turn even started because I knew this turn was going to take a lot of thought process. And you even actually at one point you'll notice if you look at it closely, Rosti looks up at me and he even I haven't talked about it. He looks up at me and he's like, "Oh, he's doing math. I wonder if like he didn't think I could kill him because he was at 29, but he knew that I was doing some math because I was like specifically like paying attention. He even noticed it. He's like, "Yeah, I noticed you didn't even look up during that turn. You're like, I don't have time to pay attention." And then he was like, "You noticed me doing counting on my fingers," and I was like, "I don't care if you saw me do anything. Like we all know what the next 2 turns are going to look like. You're going to jam Call the Wild, and I'm going to die in 2 turns, or I'm going to win next turn. You know, like I get this one window, so I had to make my choice there." But anyway, so during that turn, he played down Infested Wolf, and he had the 2/1 on the board, the Fiery Bat.
Yes,
Fiery Bat. So I'm at 12 life here, and I had a South Sea deckhand, and I had my weapon up. So if I attack the Infested Wolf, play the South Sea deckhand, and kill the Infested Wolf, I am now officially taking 3 damage, going to 9. He also had an Eaglehorn bow up, right? So if he's going to turn 8, and he's going to play Call of the Wild represents 5 damage that turn because the Animal Companion hits for 5 damage, right? And then the Eaglehorn bow hits for 3, which would, if that's 8 damage, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And if I'm taking 3 from the Infested Wolf and then from attacking it with my weapon, and then the 2/1 kills the Infested Wolf, he now has a bunch of X1s on board, and Fan of Knives can clear the board. So that puts me at 9, and he only has 8 damage. The deciding factor in that game ends up being, it's not truly was the deciding factor because he had a way to like interact with my board, but the setup that I was trying to do was I was trying to keep myself above 8, right? I need to put myself at 9, and that's what I tried to do. But the deciding factor to that play was his Fiery Bat Juggle went and hit my face. Had that Fiery Bat Juggle hit my 4/4, my Gadgetzan, I'm able to set up a much more lucrative turn, I guess you could say, because I ended up playing Fan of Knives after that, drawing a bunch off my Gadgetzan, playing a Cold Blood on my Gadgetzan, and then playing Edwin Van Cleave as an 8/8. And when I'm doing all this math, you have to recognize that I had none of these cards in my hand at the start of that turn. Now, most people would be like, "Oh man, I'm probably going to lose this game. I need to play this, this 5/4, or I need to play whatever this is, But the thing is that the reason I think this is an intuitive thing to recognize is that I recognize at that point I only get one more turn.
Exactly.
And 8 is the number that kills me, right?
Yeah.
So I already know I'm probably getting one more turn, and if I get any more than one more turn, like that's just super lucky. Like there's almost no chance I get more than one more turn. So what I need to do is I need to find a way to do 29 damage over 2 turns. And I found the way. And the way was I had to dig and I had to find Edwin Van Cleave. Like I had to find the cards that actually set up lethal in 2 turns rather than playing conservatively and putting more minions on the board. And I think a lot of people wouldn't make that line. And that's something that I think is important to recognize as just a player in general. It's a tough decision to make, but it's the right decision because it's not about like, how can I stay alive? It's like, how do I beat him before he can beat me? Like, how do I outrace this face hunter, And so that's exactly what I did. I cold-blooded the Gadgetzan. I was able to hit him for 8, play the 8/8 down. And so now instead of being at 29, he's at 21, and I have 16 on board. And with my Leroy Jenkins in hand, that puts me at 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and he was going to be at 21. So that allows me to present lethal the turn after. Now, granted, if he plays a Call of the Wild, I still have to get through his 4/4 with taunt. But if I happen to keep my Gadgetzan on board and I get through his 4/4 with taunt, there is like with a sap or something, or maybe I find an eviscerate off the top, there's a chance that because I had that Leroy, I could present lethal in 2 turns. And I think that's a play that most people wouldn't make. So I wanted to point that out. I'm not like trying to like tote my own whistle or tote my way. Is that even a really tote my own horn?
There you go. Tote your own horn.
Tote my own whistle. I didn't really want to like tote my own horn, right? Or toot my own horn. There we go. I got it right again. I didn't really want to do that. I'm just trying to like give people a perspective, and I think that's a good one to get an idea of how to try and win the face hunter versus, well, maybe not face hunter, but like the hybrid hunter or like aggressive hunter deck versus the rogue deck when you're behind. Like you just need to be able to recognize that as a rogue player. Sometimes the way that you win is the miracle side of it. You draw the cards off the top. You don't have the hand to win, and your only outs are, I have this one of Edwin Van Cleave, or I have to find both my Cold Bloods. And so you just have to make lines where when they don't work, they look terrible. Like, it's just like, why would he do that? He just lost himself the game. Well, it's like, well, I wasn't winning the game anyways, so I need to make this choice now, and I need to make this very aggressive line. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out about that game.
No, it's the difference between losing slowly and potentially winning the game. Because it's like, all right, I'm either going to lose real quick or win, or I can choose to lose over 3 turns instead of 2. Right.
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And that's something hard for newer players to recognize, that again, it's not about trying to stay alive. It's about, how can I win the game? Like, you know, if you can't do that, then you're probably losing the game. Now, and that's not true with every single deck. Like, I think of like Control Warrior. Control Warrior, sometimes it's like, how do I lose the game? Like, I'm so far ahead now. Like, what kills me? You know? And so it's not about winning the game for Control Warrior at that point. It's like trying to find a way not to lose.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way not to lose, they'll eventually win. Like, they'll get there eventually. They can go to fatigue with you. It doesn't matter what their win condition is. It's a matter of, what is your last win condition that can win you the game? How do I cut you off from that win condition?
Yeah.
So that's a different line of thinking, but this like rogue tempo kind of strategy, you have to recognize sometimes the rogue deck needs to be able to win out of nowhere, and they have to burst you, and that's their only strategy. So yeah, there was that game, and then of course the last game is the game that kind of has been a lot of people have contested the thought process on that I had on turn 2. Some people said that I lost the game on turn 2, and looking back on it, it didn't end up panning out how I'd hoped it panned out. But I'll run you guys through the thought process that I had in that turn. You can make your own conclusions and decisions based on it. Before I actually tell you how I feel about it. So what happened in that game is on turn 1, I had coin, and I could have gone Argent Squire, coin, Sir Finley. Now, I know that Argent Squire, coin, Sir Finley is weak against him having a Doomsayer, because I only had either a Rockbite or a Lightning Bolt in hand. I'm not sure which one it was, but I only had 3 damage plus the 2 1/3s on board, right? So the most amount of damage that I could do to the 07 Doomsayer, if he had it on turn 2, was, let's say, 6, right? Because I also had a Flame Tongue Totem, so I couldn't kill it, right? I couldn't kill it. So I just played out the 1/1, and I passed. He goes to his turn, and he does play the Doomsayer. It goes to my turn, and I have coin in hand, and I have Sir Finley in hand, and I drew either Rockbiter or Lightning Bolt. So I have Rockbiter, Lightning Bolt, Sir Finley, and coin, right? So in theory, I have 3 mana because I have the coin on my turn 2. And I can play all 3 of those spells if I want. Now, normally it is not correct to protect a 1/1 from a Doomsayer. Now, I chose to protect the 1/1 from a Doomsayer specifically because of Sir Finley. And the thought process there is that even though I'm giving up extra cards and I'm giving up extra potential position, or I'm giving up extra potential burst in the end to like try and finish my opponent off. Like, obviously Rockbiter Doomhammer is such a strong combination that combination represents, Rockbiter represents 6 points of damage when that card's on, when we have a Doomhammer with it. So on top of the extra 4 damage from the Doomhammer, which hits for 10 in 1 turn, that's just like very powerful thing to be able to do. So making that decision of losing my Rockbiter and losing my Lightning Bolt is something that like it's not always desirable because you're losing so many resources. However, the reason I made that decision was because since I'm playing Sir Finley, I'm expecting to find a hero power that does damage to my opponent. So something like, Hunter hero power is obviously the most desirable there. Rogue is fine because it does damage to their face. You have the flame, or you have the mage one, which does 1 damage. You have the druid one, which gains you armor and does 1 damage, which is pretty decent there. And then what's the other good one? Did I name them all? Anyway, but basically the idea is that these hero powers are going to give you extra reach and finish off the game for you. So in almost all circumstances when you're playing, you're going to find a hero power that does damage for you. And so my thought process was, I want to apply so much pressure to my opponent because when he gets to the point where he is playing Alexstrasza, I can't let him use an aggressive Alexstrasza. That is to say, I can't let an ice block be up and him to use an Alexstrasza targeting my face. If he puts me to 15 while he still has his ice block up, the game is over. Right. So my game plan is to not get time walked by the Doomsayer, because if the Doomsayer like goes, I don't have a board the next turn. He can just do freely whatever he wants. Put up his secret, cast Arcane Intellect, put out an Acolyte of Pain, something like that. And the reason I made the decision to go sort of all in on turn 2 was because his deck didn't run Flame Strike. On top of that, he's already used one Doomsayer, and he has only one Acolyte of Pain. So his likelihood of having a way to draw through his deck is less than the typical build. He doesn't have a Flame Strike, so he doesn't have an immediate board clear that clears everything. He only has like Blizzards, which occasionally don't clear everything. And then also, I think that I make the decision because of Sir Finley, because I expect Sir Finley to give me back extra damage that I'm wasting on these cards. So even though I waste these cards, the idea is by turns 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and moving everything after that, I'm able to utilize the hero power every turn to apply pressure. Mm-hmm. So that extra pressure from the hero power allows me to put myself in a much better position. So I make the decision, and now granted, the ordering that I chose was probably incorrect, because I could have played Sir Finley first and reassessed after I looked at the hero power. Mm-hmm. But I knew that if I'm playing Sir Finley, I'm going all in, because if I didn't play Sir Finley and I just hit him for 1 and pass and let the Doomsayer do its thing, then the turn after that I would have had to go Sir Finley, coin Feral Spirits, because I'm going to reload the board the next turn, and that play would have actually played out better for me, how the game played out. But the biggest key here is that when I did get the Sir Finley choice, I had these 3 choices. I could take the Warrior hero power, the Priest hero power, or the Paladin hero power. And subjectively, those are the worst 3 hero powers. Actually, maybe not even subjectively. Those are the worst 3 hero powers to get against Freeze Mage. I've actually never run into a circumstance against Freeze Mage playing anything with Sir Finley where I've only had those 3 choices. Okay. And that happens to be the 1-3 choice options that I have on the big stage, which kind of sucks. So that being said, let's talk about those 3 hero powers, because this is the other thing that I think people were really contesting, and still I don't really know if there hasn't been a consensus on this. There seems to be some people who say you never take the Warrior hero power. There's other people who have been on the side of the Warrior hero power. There's people who say you take the Priest Warrior hero power, and I've even heard some people say take the Paladin hero power. So I'm going to quickly run through all of them and talk to you why I think taking the Warrior hero power is still correct here. First off, let's talk about the Paladin hero power, as it's the one that I think is absolutely incorrect to take here. The Paladin hero power in the late game does nothing for you, because it just gets pinged by the mage's spell powers. Now, granted, there's going to be a couple turns where you'll get a 1/1 on board and it lives, but even in the late game, a lot of times that means that you're filling up your board and then they just Frost Nova. And so its impact is almost non-existent. It maybe does 1 point of damage throughout the whole game, and then it just gives you these 1/1s that generally do nothing. Now, granted, it doesn't do absolutely nothing, because it eats 2 mana off from the mage player every single time they have to use their hero power to kill the 1/1. Mm-hmm. So it is limiting the hero or the mana of the mage player, right? It's restricting their ability to stick to their game plan. That's great, and that's why some people say, hey, Paladin's probably the choice, because you keep producing this wave of army of like 1/1s. You just have more things than they can keep up with, is the thought process. The Priest one, some people would say, is the correct one, because as the Priest hero power and you're playing Aggro Shaman, the opponent has a lot of ways to do 2 damage to your minions. So you think of Blizzard is what I think of. If they go Blizzard, I can heal one of my minions back up. And so then I have a minion that's ready to go, and I can protect my minions in a sense. I can protect my board. And that's not a bad thought process, especially because if you look at Rosty's list, he was not running a Flame Strike. He was actually running a Mirror Image instead of a Flame Strike in that slot. And that was a concession to the fact that there's going to be a lot of Aggro Shaman, and he expected a lot of Hunter type decks, like a lot of aggressive decks. So he wanted to have the Mirror Image instead. And I think that was pretty much the correct decision from a deck construction standpoint. However, I think that the Flame Strike, and actually the Flame Strike would have changed my plays a little bit. The Warrior hero power is what I ended up taking, and I'm going to run through why I took the Warrior hero power and why I still think that was actually the correct play. By taking the Warrior hero power, it does one of 2 things. One, I know he doesn't have Flame Strike, so he doesn't have like a true board clear. His way of clearing my board is, like wipe some things away, and then ping them down and use a lot of resources to answer them. And you saw that in the game, right? Like he played Frostbolt on my minions. He played his Forgotten Torches on my minions. I believe he even fireballed something maybe once. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm trying to remember too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that like without a Flame Strike, he's now down to, these are his board clears. He's got 2 Blizzards. He's got 1 Frost Nova plus Doomsayer left, and that's it. He's got 3 board clears effectively, right? And then other than that, it's like he's got Frost Novas to stall him, right? He can buy time with Mirror Images and Frost Novas. And so his ability to actually clear my board is relatively low comparative to your typical Freeze Mage. So I took the Warrior Hero Power because what Warrior effectively does for me, it gains me 10 armor throughout the game. And that's not good because you're not really trying to do that as the aggro deck, right? But in this circumstance, when you run into these 3, in fact, we even talked about this. Me and Racy talked about this for a little bit, and I this was the game plan. If I ran into this circumstance, I take the armor, and the reason is because it gives you longevity again. So like if we can continue to the Shaman game plan of blowing up the ice blocks and forcing him to heal himself with the Alexstrasza, we're able to utilize that armor to put ourselves out of range of actually dying. Right, so the game plan shifts from being the beatdown. So at first, the aggro shaman is the beatdown, and the freeze mage is the control. But if you can recognize after the Alex comes down, hey, I can clear this Alex, I can get rid of it, then you can transition from being the beatdown to being the control because you've got these extra burn spells. Now, this strategy works when you have something like Doomsayer, which does 14 damage over like 6 turns, because I'm able to use the Doomsayer to apply pressure to face, and in order to keep popping blocks, ice blocks, and ice barriers. But at the same time sandbagging my burn spells or sandbagging extra minions so that if he does go for a board clear, I can keep 8 points on board. And the key here is keeping 8 points on board. And you'll notice if you go back through it, the game again, by the time he plays the Alexstrasza, I had a choice where I could have used my Tuskar Totemic to kill his 1/1. So if he went for an Alexstrasza turn the next turn, he couldn't actually get me under 8 points on the board. But instead, I decided to just ignore it because at the time, I didn't think it was correct I just kind of attacked face. And the reason is because I don't think I was able to apply enough pressure to put him down to 1. And I think it was correct to put him to 1 and say he doesn't have the Alex yet. Like just assume he doesn't have the Alex. But if he has the Alex, I would have kept 8 points on board. So what ends up happening is I get him, put him to 1. He goes back, and also I misplayed a turn earlier to put him to 1. So that kind of sucks. But then he goes back to his turn, and he plays his Alexstrasza, and he has a 1/1 on board, and he's able to use that 1/1 to trade into my 1/1, which puts me at 7 on board. So at this point, I need to top deck something that does damage, right, that turn. It either has charge, or it's a lightning bolt, or a burn spell, even a doom hammer at that point. At that point, that's the pivotal moment where I believe I was at 40 health. I might have been at 42 at that point.
You were really high, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so at that point, he's only got so much burn left in his deck. And if he gets more than 1 swing in with that Alexstrasza, I probably lose the game. But if I'm able to transition to becoming no longer the beatdown role and switching to the control role because I know he doesn't flame strike, I'm able to make this transitional phase where I'm able to clear his Alexstrasza, which is his win condition at this point. He can't win without hitting with that Alexstrasza, because at that point we kill the let's say we found a lightning bolt off the type, and I'm able to kill the Alexstrasza, and I'm able to pass back to him. The only threats he has left are 1 Emperor Theresen, which is, a 5/5 that I'm going to have to deal with. And if I draw a Lava Burst or some other way to answer it, which I'll probably be able to answer it or contest it over a series of 2 turns. But the 5 is a lot less than 8, because the 8 is like, if he hits twice with 8, it's like 3 hits with Alexstrasza or with Emperor Theresen.
Right.
So you get like 1 hit. If he gets 1 hit with Alexstrasza and like 2 hits with Emperor Theresen in there, I probably don't lose the game. But if he gets that second hit with Alexstrasza, it's effectively like getting hit 3 times by Emperor Theresen and once by Alexstrasza in theory. Like that, it's that combination of 4 hits that we couldn't take. So effectively what happens there is I transition, as I say, to being the control. And I don't know, like I can look back at it and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure what he had left was he had a Pyroblast left, he had a Fireball left, he had the second half of a Forgotten Torch left, and I think he had, which would be the Roaring Torch, and I think he had 1 Forgotten Torch after that. And that was it. That was his last of his burn, and then he had his hero power, right? So if I'm at 42 and I kill the 8/8, let's say I did find a burn spell there, I kill the 8/8. Now I'm at 42, and his burn spells in total, he's got the Pyroblast is 10, He's got the Fireball, which is 6. He's got the second half of the Roaring Torch, the Forgotten Torch. Or sorry, he's got the Roaring Torch, the second half of the Forgotten Torch, which is another 6. Then he has, the Forgotten Torch and the other Roaring Torch, which is another 9.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, it's looking at like what, 19, 20, 25, 20, 29 damage there. And I'm at 42. So if he has 29 plus he can start pinging me and I can kill his Alexstrasza, that means the Emperor Theresen at that point has to hit me 3 times. Because I'm able to gain armor each turn, which gains me at least 1 health each turn because he's pinging me along the way. And assuming Emperor Theresen doesn't come down the exact next turn and hit me approximately 3 times, I'm able to get out of range of him even just killing me at all. But the key there was I didn't have the 8 points that turn. And so I wasn't able to make that transition into becoming the beatdown. Or from being the beatdown to the control. So I just had to keep applying pressure to his face. And then the turn after that, he put the ice barrier down. And at that point, I knew that there was no chance of me being the beatdown anymore. And so I needed to transition to killing the Alex immediately and hoping he didn't have a lot of burn in his hand. And if he didn't have enough burn in his hand, I might have been able to gain enough armor and stall out long enough to get there. But yeah, so that was how that whole entire game went. And that's conceptually the reason why you take the warrior hero power there. And I still don't think that with the choices I had available, I still pretty much, I fall under the camp of saying the warrior is better. Now, granted, some people fall under the camp of saying the priest is better. And even a much lesser extent of people have been saying the paladins are better. And I just disagree with that.
Oh, sure.
But I think that it's one of those two.
Yeah.
And I'm on the warrior camp. And the reason is because he didn't have that flame strike. If he doesn't have that AoE effect that clears the entire board, it's really hard for him to fully contest the board. And I can just keep putting things out and he just eventually will run out of resources is the idea. The other big factor in that game was I never found a Doomhammer. I never found any 7/7s and I never found Thing from Belows. So I never found Doomhammer. I never found Thing from Belows and I never found Faceless. Oh, what is it called? The 7/7 for 4.
Yeah.
So I just never found those big threats, the things that really are just great contesting things in that matchup, which sucks. And I had 11 cards left in my deck. So half of my deck was these very active cards, right? They were coming eventually, but they never came. So that kind of sucks. But like that's something that's outside of the reach of somebody who can plan and design into their game plan. It just sucks. But so that being said, let me get back to that turn 2 real quick because I want to talk about that a little bit more. I know that I'm like really exhausting this game because there was a lot that went into the thought process of this game. Mm-hmm. That turn 2 where I made the tempo play, right, and I played out the Sir Finley and wasted both my Rockbiter and my Lightning Bolt. That turn was effectively I lose 3 points of damage, and what I'm trying to say there is, if I sandbag, let's say I go hit the tack in for 1 to your face, and then I pass. I've hit him for 1 right there. And the turn afterwards, I can run out my team, right? I can go Feral Spirits plus Sir Finley. That gives me a big board presence. And then the turn afterwards, I'm able to play that Flame Tongue and still get 4 points. But the line that I took instead was kill his stuff off, and then next turn I can play the Flame Tongue, and the Flame Tongue hits for 4 points. So I gave up 6 points of burn, plus, which would be the Rockbiter and the Lightning Bolt, plus the Argent Squire's 1 damage. I gave up that 7 points of damage to gain a 4 damage from the Flame Tongue and gain the tempo. And I chose to make that line because, again, like I said, I expect my hero power to give me back at least 3 points of damage, which is what I'm giving up there. And with less cards in my hand, I have a higher desire and a higher likelihood to want to utilize that hero power. So that's why I chose that line. In hindsight, so getting back to what I said in the beginning of this conversation, I actually don't think it was correct now. Now, again, had I found any other hero power, it would have played out positively for me and it would have worked out just fine. And it really does suck that no one ever saw my 3 hero power choices because everyone's like, you took a warrior? What an idiot. Like it just freaked out immediately because they didn't see that I had a really bad choice because I had to take it real quick since rope was going. And I was just like, I have to take the warrior because I didn't want to get stuck with paladin or something. Like I didn't want to get stuck with the one I didn't want. So I had to do that play very quickly. But nonetheless, like, had I waited, I would have had those 3 points given back to me because I wouldn't have wasted those extra 3 points. But the downside to there is I lose a turn, right? And so my idea was I'd rather have the tempo. I'd rather play aggressively. I'd rather be contextually moving forward before turn 9. I want to present lethal before he can Alex me as quickly as possible. And so I was trying to maintain the tempo and put him on the back foot so that on turn 3, if he has an Arcane Intellect, he doesn't get that turn off to be able to Arcane Intellect. He had like ping my Argent Squire or something, or like he has to play play a secret up or something. He may not get the chance to get to the Arcane Intellect on 3, which is something I was trying to force him to not have that ability to do. So yeah. So that's that game, and that's basically how the series went. In the end, I ended up losing the series 4-2. He ended up taking down the series. However, I knew this is exactly how the series was going to go. Rosti and I both kind of agreed that he was going to be ahead 3-2 going into the final round, where I was going to probably pick up my Aggro Shaman win, and then I just had to pick up the Hunter win from there. And didn't work out that way, but I stuck to my game plan, and the game plan played out outside of winning in the end exactly how I expected it to. And me and Rosti, actually, we both discussed it, and we both agreed that banning the bans that we both chose were correct, and that the choices that I picked and the choices that he picked for how he was queuing their decks were relatively correct. And then there was just like one other thing like within the queuing that we discussed minorly together. But for the most part, it's exactly how we both expected it to play out for the most part, minus like, obviously I wanted it to win in the Freeze Mage, but we knew that it was going to be probably a 3-2 split going into that Freeze Mage game. So yeah, that was basically the experience. And then I just hung out on Sunday and watched Cydonia kick some butt with his insane amount of luck at the very end.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Did you watch that last game, Mike?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. He drew his animal companion off the top. We were even talking about this, like, oh man, Houndmasters is only out. And we're like, oh no, he doesn't even have a Houndmaster right now, I think is what we were saying. And we're like, oh, he's got no outs. And then he rips the animal companion. We're like, oh, he could get Misha. And he rolls the Misha. And we're like, oh my God, he's still in this somehow. And then like, we're all like on our edge of our seat. But like, it was very esports, but it really sucks that like the winner of America's championship was based on rolling Misha, a 33% chance.
Yeah, 33.
You know, like drawing it off the top, that's fine. That's how you like that's part of the inherent design of the game. But like rolling a 33%, and it's like, of course he rolls the 33%. And then he, on top of that, he had to get like some juggles from, I think it was Fiery Bats or Huge Toads that went the right direction for him after that. So it was another 50% on top of that. And then on top of that, then he had to get the deadly shot that was a 50% just to win the game. So like it just is a shame, and it really can, it irks me personally that like the competitive scene's final game for the America's Championship was this sort of like, here's a lucky 33%, here's a lucky deadly shot, here's a lucky juggle from your knife juggle, or your Huge Toad. And so like in the end, the outcome was not something that, it was outside the bounds of each player. It was simply based on the design of the game, and just hoping that the design of the game falls in your favor, you know. And it just really sucks that the coin flips were what decided that, because I don't think it really promotes, and this is something that me and the other players, we all talked about this afterwards. We were talking about how we don't think it really like promotes the game to be better. You know, it doesn't like justify it as an esport even more. It actually like makes it more meme-tacular as an esport. And that really sucks, because this is the part of the game that myself and all those other players that compete in this scale, this is the thing that we like about this game. And even true with like a bunch of fans in the game. Like this is the reason we play this game. We play it because we enjoy the competitive aspects of it and the potential competitive aspects of it. And it's just, it sucks for us as competitive players to see that the outcomes are coming based on, or it came, maybe not always coming, but they came in this circumstance based on some RNG that's designed into the game. So it's just, I don't know. That's my rant for the day.
Well, and like you said earlier, like your last game, you didn't pull Doomhammer, you didn't pull your Flame Wreath Faceless, and you didn't pull Thing from Below's. That would have been huge in that game.
Yeah, and I mean, well, but again though, like, that I'm not upset about at all.
Sure.
Right. He also ripped Blizzard off the top 2 turns in a row where I could have presented lethal. Like that sucks, but that's fine. Like that's part of the inherent design of a card game, right?
Sure.
You only get this many cards per turn, and that's fine. Like, you know, going in, you designed your deck to minimize those things from happening. It's the downsides is like, for instance, Rosti rolled Huffer twice against me against Rogue versus Warrior.
I watched that and I'm like, of course he got Huffer twice.
And, you know, and that actually won him the game, because hitting me with that Huffer extra 4 damage from Huffer is huge against the Rogue, because the Rogue doesn't have that hero power, or that heal power. And so they have to use their life as a resource in order to try and create this sort of really close game and then find a way to finish the game. And so him rolling Huffer there was very big. There was this turn where I played Azure Drake, and then he rolled a second Huffer. And I was just like, I can kill my Azure Drake this turn. Like, that's really big, because now I think I had a Phantom Knives in hand or something. And like, now I can't I don't have a way. No, I didn't have a fan of knives. He actually ended up trading with my Azure Drake to try and play around that is what happened. But like, had I had like let's say an Eviscerate or something, and he rolls a Misha, like the game's outcome is so different because now I'm ahead on board. But like his 33% both times hits for him, and that actually changes that game, and I lose that game because of it. You know, and the same is true with the Cydonia versus Rosti game in the final. Like he rolls Misha and then he wins some favorable juggles, and that changes from this point where like all of us are looking at each other and we're like, well, Rosti wins. Rosti's going to win the America's Championship. And every single one of us, I'm talking like all 7 other players, Cora was standing there waiting. Trying to think who else was. I think TJ was standing there waiting at the time. There was a bunch of people. All of us consensusly said, yeah, Rosti wins. Rosti wins. Rosti's going to win here. And then when he rips the Misha, we're all like, oh, you know, maybe he has a chance. Like, I think he has a really, really slim chance here. And then all of a sudden he like wins the deadly shot, and we're like, oh my God, he actually won this game. Like, that's insane that like he won this game. But like the truth of the matter is that Rosti's lineup, Rosti's strategy was better against what his strategy was, and he didn't get rewarded for it. And that really sucks. Like in my honest opinion, Rosti's lineup was the lineup that contested what everybody else was doing the best. Like he came in with a lineup that he said, look, I'm expecting everyone to bring aggro. I'm expecting everyone to bring hunter. I'm going to go lower to the ground with them, and we're going to go even faster, and we're going to go even like more aggressive. And then we're going to play freeze mage, and we're going to beat those zoo decks, and we're going to beat those aggressive matchups by stopping them and playing freeze, like, and burning them down. And that's what his strategy was. He was targeting aggressive play, like, but not super aggressive play, just like the aggressive lines that he expects everybody else to play. And his lineup was really strong, and it sucks that he didn't win. But again, I don't feel bad for Cydonia winning. I don't feel bad for Rosti losing. It sucks that the outcome is not based on it was based on like randomness. It wasn't based on some sort of like, hey, I was the one who happened to get the right decks built, and I was the one who was able to take it down because of that. You know, and like, it was purely based on some levels of randomness that were outside of their hands, because the game designers decided to choose to design these into the game as competitively viable cards. Okay, let's not talk about that. That's the kind of crap that gets me salty. I'm sorry, that stuff gets me super salty.
No, that was real good. That was some things that I was wondering what you were gonna say when you got back. And especially that last game. I think a lot of people, Twitch chat was all up in arms about the play you made where you busted the ice block instead of
that was just a misplay.
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh, that lost him the game. Like, no, I don't think that lost him the game at all.
Yeah.
I think if anything, if anyone was going to make an argument about a play that lost the game, it was that turn 2, right?
Turn 2, yeah.
And even then, like, there's an argument for both sides, which I was so excited to hear what your point on that was, but. I mean, subjectively, you can argue both sides. In the end, I think the outcome was incorrect, or not the outcome. I think that the choice was incorrect, but I felt like that gaining that tempo was going to allow me to transition into killing him before Alex. So that's why I made the decision that I made. Like, it was definitely an all-in strategy. Like, I was like, that's why I tanked all that turn 2. I was like, I'm either making the decision to go in all in right now, or we're slowing the game down by a turn and a half. And and I decided, no, we're going now. Like, now is the time. So, okay. Yeah. Well, what's the next steps then? So you got points towards, I guess BlizzCon now, right?
For the next preliminary.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. So what the next tournament that would seed to BlizzCon?
Okay.
Is what I believe I'm already qualified, and if I'm not qualified, I'm 1 point away now. So all I'm going to need to do is basically make Legend this season, which I actually haven't done yet. So I'm leaving it to the last minute. I'm gonna get there tonight when I'm streaming. So
okay.
I'm at like the top of rank 1. I just need to put the time in to get there. I just haven't, because again, since I was testing for this, I just chose to not focus on ladder and just said I'll get the Legend at the end of the season when I've got some more time. So yeah, that's pretty much the shindig, the dealio.
Nice.
Yeah. I want to give a quick shout out to PNC. I feel very bad for him. I think he was favored to win the Joster versus PNC matchup in the first one. And he and I actually went out drinking the last night after we were done, and we went and watched the Copa America game. He's from Argentina, if anyone didn't know. And we watched the Argentinians lose to Chile. And so I feel bad for him, because it was just a super losing weekend for him. And like, I feel for him because he was the one who had the large, like, he was the one that was favored to win in both the Copa Americas when it came to Argentinian pride and when it came to the Hearthstone tournament. He was probably favored to win against that matchup. And so he lost his matchup and Argentina lost. But like, I do want to give also a shout out to like every single one of the 8 players. They were all fantastic. I know that people give gripe about Napoleon sometimes and say that Dear Jason BMs sometimes, and that's just like, that happens, that's fine.
Yeah.
But both of them were fantastic and just really great people to meet. I think every single person there was great. And like, obviously Napoleon has some social ineptness, like he's not the most sociable person, but when you talk about something that he's passionate about when it comes to Hearthstone, with the two of us are able to have really in-depth dialogue, and that's awesome. And like, actually we all are now good friends, and we all keep in contact to some extent, and we're like, we're all on the friends list of each other and Hearthstone. So it's really cool that like all 8 players, despite win or lose, have become friends together and kind of expanded the inner community that we all have become together, which is really cool. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm hoping that we, I was talking to some people and I was like, what if we all just tested for prelims together next season and we became like a team of the spring championship team?
Yes.
And it's like, bring it. Like, we are the 8 players and we all brought this lineup, like, just like, cause I think that'd be such like a weird, it would almost be like kind of like an epic story to be like, oh yeah, we all met, we all played each other, Cydonia won, but we're all working together now. Guess what? Like, here comes the force that was spring championships. Like, we bonded together and we created this even greater thing and this bigger, more dominant force in Hearthstone. So I don't know. It was really cool just to meet everybody and work with everybody. And I hope to keep in contact with them all, to be honest.
Nice. That's cool. That's really neat. All right. Well, moving forward.
Oh, shoot. He said it.
Is there anything else for those playing at home? I got
for those playing at home.
Baby, a triple.
You threw them all in there.
I threw them all 3 of them.
All 3 of our usual comments that we make.
Yep.
Cool. I don't think there's really much else to talk about this week. We could talk about the meta real quick if you wanted to, Mike.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that it's kind of coming to like everyone's conclusion. Have you ever checked out the Vicious Syndicate Data Reaper reports yet?
Not recently, no.
Right. So in the past, we've talked about the Tempo Storm has in the past done sort of their like meta analysis. And I think that if you're wanting to play on the ladder, it's getting close to the end of the season right now, you need to still look at the Tempo Storm meta analysis, because that's the one that people are still predominantly looking at. And their meta analysis is the one that I think will still dictate what you're going to see on ladder more often.
Okay.
However, Vicious Syndicate actually has real data. Like, instead of it's just like, here's some pros and here's their thoughts, like they have logged games, and they've created, obviously eventually as you get so many games logged in, whether the player's the greatest player ever or the worst player ever, and it's actually pretty good players that send in their TracoBot information for the Data Reaper report, they basically have gathered up enough information to create a statistical analysis of where every deck falls in the meta. And their general consensus, and actually they've been praising this deck since the end of prelims. When All Sky High took this to prelims, the day after the preliminary tournaments, I started playing this on my stream. Like, I was like, this is the deck. Like, this deck is very strong, and it's the Dragon Warrior deck. So if you want to play a deck that's going to be pretty good, I think Dragon Warrior is worth considering. However, despite it being a very good deck and being one that you can take to Legend, I think that you have to also look at as I said, the Tempo Storm meta analysis. And Tempo Storm puts Cthulhu Warrior among the top, if not the top decks. So what I've been noticing is the trend is to play more Cthulhu Warrior. And that is because, 1, people read those meta analysis reports, and then 2, some people like the deck. So its numbers are actually greater than maybe it is representative of what its actual like technical win percentage is, but it's just still a very strong deck. So I think if you really want to be successful on the ladder, you should look at maybe and I'm not going to give a specific deck suggestion right now, but you have a couple ways to approach it. You can either play the Dragon Warrior deck and play probably subjectively the best deck and just jam games with it. I would suggest Rosty's List. It's a solid one. Maybe cutting the Inzoth's first mate for something else, maybe like a Malkarok, or if you want to be more aggressive, more slower, or if you want to be a little more aggressive, you could run like I don't know, like a slam or something, or just something that's a little bit more low end, or maybe run like one fierce monkey. Or last night I was running the Blackwing technician as a one of, just because it was another solid 3-body. A 3/5 for 3 is still really strong. But basically, that's one of the strongest decks. So you can take that approach, or you can take the approach, in my opinion, that if you're wanting to get to Legend before this season, which is basically 2 days from now when we recorded this, or is it? There's like 2 days left. There's like a day and a half left. But if you want to get to Legend, another way to approach it is to play around the Cthulhu Warrior deck. So like, look at the Data Reaper report, find the deck that Cthulhu Warriors are weak against, and jam those decks. So yeah, and the reason I'm not going to give you guys the names of it is because I suggest everybody to bookmark the Data Reaper report. Vicious Syndicate has really stepped up their game, and like they're the team that I'm most impressed with these days, and the team that I think like is really just putting all their effort towards creating great content and putting great players at the best position that they can to do well. Like I don't know, like there's just a bunch of really good players on their team, and I tested with Racy, for instance, and like it's just really cool to see them. Like what we interviewed Cora when she was on Vicious Syndicate, and then we interviewed Brandon Youngblood when he was what is this, like a year ago now?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was actually, I think, my first episode of the show that I was ever on was the episode that Brandon Youngblood came on and talked about Vicious Syndicate with us. And it's been a year now, and and we haven't seen them like blow up to be the biggest team of all time in Hearthstone, but they're slowly making progress towards being like the most influential team on when it comes to Hearthstone, in my opinion. Like they're the team that when it comes to me, I'm looking at them to say, what are they doing now? It's much less true looking at like teams like Archon or Tempo Storm, in my opinion. So, and I think that trend is going to continue. I think that they're the dedicated player that is specifically dedicated to the tournament scene and specifically dedicated to doing that. And if you guys don't know this, I think we've mentioned this multiple times before, but they also do the Tuesday Night Hype tournament.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is, I think is it the longest running tournament series?
I think you're right.
I don't know. I think it might be.
It's one of the biggest, longest running ones, right?
Yeah, maybe the correct way of saying it is it's the longest running open tournament series, because it's an open, right? It's not like an invitational tournament or anything, but they have been doing it for a long time, and so they are professionals at managing that, and they know their stuff. So, yeah. Nice. Pretty much all I got to say about that right now.
That's all I got to say about that.
All I got to say about that. I'm going to play, to give you guys a perspective on what I'm going to play. I don't know if this is the correct choice of a deck to play, but I know I'm going to get to Legend tonight because it's only going to take a couple, like 20 or 30 more games. I'm playing Cthulhu Druid, and I'm playing it because I enjoy the deck, and I think it's a solid deck. It's the kind of deck that has a pretty good 50-50 across the field kind of matchups. Like, it doesn't have any of those decks that just feels like you're going to lose immediately. I mean, there's going to be games that you're going to feel like you're going to lose immediately because, like, let's say Zoo has a really good opening hand you can't keep up. And that's not like your most favorable matchup either, but I don't see a lot of Zoo floating around, and I really enjoy playing the deck, and I think it's a really strong deck, which is why I took it to the Americas Championship. And actually, I think Sidonia feels the same. I think maybe he mentioned in his winter interview, I'm not 100% sure, but I know that he had mentioned it to me at least at one point that, like, he and I both kind of feel like Cthulhu Druid is one of the better decks to be playing, especially on the North American server, where it's kind of hedged a little bit closer towards aggressive decks. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I just talked for an hour and a half. Is that true? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, pretty much. No, that was real good. Thank you for sharing about your trip, though, and your experiences there. That, like, I was really excited for you to get back because I really wanted to hear just what your take was. That this was excellent, awesome, perfect, loved it.
Cool. Glad you did.
It was fun rooting for you. Me and the wife. Ellen does not really play Hearthstone or any video games, but she's like, "Is that a good play? Is that good?" It's like, yeah.
That's cool that she got into it.
Yeah,
because she knows me she knows me because she's mailed me stuff through the mail before,
right? Exactly. Right? Yep.
Cool.
So yeah. All right.
Yep.
Well,
hopefully we'll get back there next season. I actually want to talk about that real quick now. I'm thinking of it. I got one more gripe to talk about. So I don't know if anyone who follows the tournament setting knows this, but the Americas is the way that the preliminary tournaments work is that they run the European preliminary first, then they run the American preliminary the weekend afterwards, and then they run the Asia Pacific the weekend after that. And that has been how it has been the last 2 seasons. And I believe that this next season will follow that same schedule. I actually am like heavily against sticking to that schedule because I think it's kind of it gives the deck. So good deck designers get rewarded if they live in Europe. Good meta analysis people get rewarded if they're in America, and good fine tuners get, I know there's a weird like term to use, but I'll explain what I mean. But people who can fine tune deck lists get rewarded when they play in the Asia Pacific, or if they can break the meta after that. So those people typically get rewarded if they're in those settings, because the way that it worked with the spring championships or spring preliminaries is that the new set, not League of Explorers, the Old Gods got released just before the Europe preliminary, right? So the Europe preliminary, it was kind of this unknown format. Like there'd only been DreamHack the weekend before, so there wasn't a really defined meta. So the people that were rewarded in that setting were the people who were able to design a deck lineup that was, their own thing. So the people who were deck designers were the ones that were heavily rewarded in Europe. And then when you come to Americas, then I took their deck lineups and I refined them and I changed them and I made them a little bit more refined and got them. I built them to combat or contest the current meta, because most people are going to show up with things that were successful in Europe, deck lists that were successful in Europe, and they're going to create these similar lineups to deck lists that were successful in Europe. And you can take one of two approaches at that point. You can either say, I can beat this meta with my lineup, right? My lineup just destroys the meta. Or you can say, I'm going to take the meta lineup that was the best lineup that came out of EU, and I'm going to tweak it just slightly so that it's favored against the other people that are playing the best, but still doesn't hinder its ability to be considered the best lineup. So I think that's the strategy America has to take. And then when you get finally to Asia Pacific, it's either you have to be out of your mind to take this crazy off the wall lineup and try and combat this now 3 weeks of best players in the world playing and refining these decks, or you have to play a super refined version of the deck. So I'm really against this idea of Europe always being first, or America always being second, and Asia Pacific always being third. And I really wish that maybe Blizzard can reconsider this moving into next year, where they say one season Europe goes first, America goes second, and Asia Pacific goes third, and then the next season America goes first, Asia Pacific goes second, and Europe goes third, and then the last season Asia Pacific first, Europe second, and America last. That way, the people because some of these best players, some of them are really good deck designers. I think of people like Neobility. Neobility is going to be rewarded for being a great deck designer. Like Muzzy. Muzzy's going to be a great deck designer, and he's going to be rewarded for that. BB Gun. These players are going to be rewarded for being great players, but more specifically, their deck construction ability is probably better than most other people's. So they're going to be able to take advantage of that if they're the first week after a set gets released. Like if they go to the preliminaries right after a set release and they're the week that is able to focus on that, they're going to be rewarded for it. Unlike the people like myself, like I consider myself, actually, I think I'm the one that gets rewarded for that too, because I consider myself to be more of a deck designer. Like I enjoy making deck decisions and making lineups that are a little bit out of the norm, because I think I'll get rewarded in a non-known meta by making these decisions to design a lineup that people aren't necessarily expecting. So that's just something that I actually even going to contact Blizzard at some point, and I just haven't had a chance to sit down with them, or just sit down and write this email, but just to give that suggestion to them. And I talked to the guys who run it when we went to Blizzard's campus this last week, and I just really want to give them an articulate reason why, hey, this is why I think you should do it this way, because I think that you're going to get players that get rewarded for being deck designers one season, or depending on where they live regionally. And you're going to get the other players that are better at refining. You're going to get the players that can play perfectly some seasons that are going to get rewarded as well, depending on the region. And I think it's just kind of cool to be able to change that up. So
nice.
Yeah, that's basically all I got to say about that now.
Sweet. All right. Anything else?
No, nothing else that I can think of.
Okay.
I'm sure there's 700 other things as soon as we get done with the podcast to say, but like at this point, no.
All right. Well, that will be episode 72 of the Death Rattle Crew. Don't forget you can find us on www.deathrattlecrew.com on your podcast catcher of choice. And Bradford Lee, again, what's your schedule moving forward after the next, I guess, week and a half?
So I am streaming actually tonight as we record this, but I'm going to be gone until the 11th of July, and then I will be back to normal streaming every single day at twitch.tv/BradfordLee.
Perfect. All right. So from the rest of the Death Rattle crew, I am Tech2, that is Bradford Lee, and we will see you next week.
72 Death Rattle crew. It rhymes.
Australia.
Australia.
Why am I
got my
saying
Australia
Australia?
at the end.
America.
America.
No more Australia until Matt shows up. That's it.
I gotta say it. We gotta keep the Australias going.
We do. I know.
I feel like it's been going. Well, how long? He's been doing that for like a year now.
Yeah. Have you even
Yeah.
been to Australia?
No.
Me neither.
So I just can't say it then, I guess.
No, I don't. I guess that's not what I'm saying. I don't know.
You're just curious.
Yeah. Fine. Australia.
Australia.